and just say where you're calling in from, where you're listening in from. We usually like to see where everybody's calling in from because we have a very international audience. But I think we can go ahead and get started. I believe we're live. So today's topic is about, are we delivering projects or are we delivering value? And so let me set this up. As PMs, we tend to be very busy, busy chasing people, busy driving your projects, to the finish line. But oftentimes we don't always take a step back and look at the big picture, like what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. What is that leading up to, right? So that's what we want to dig into, and I'm really excited about today's topic because, like, the guest, Martin, has been through the trenches, so to speak, where he's was busy delivering a lot of projects, and then he ended up receiving not the kind of feedback that he hoped. And we're going to dig into that story very shortly. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Martin. Martin, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mukhtar. Yeah, it's good. It's been good. I'm Martin. I am a product delivery manager. I've been in the project management industry for almost 20 years. 20 years coming July, I think this year. So I'll officially be 20 years this July. I've gone through most of the industries. I started in design engineering. I went to manufacturing after that, and then construction, and now I'm in IT. So it's been good. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no, really excited to have you on. So, yeah, I was going to ask you to just briefly introduce yourself. So, if I could ask, so you've been through different industries. How did you get into project management?
So when I started out as a drafter, like I used AutoCAD, develop 3D models for oil and gas. But as I was doing that, all of it were project based. Like I was like part of the execution team. I developed the pipelines. I was doing stress engineering a bit, but I was keen on like what the leads were doing is really managing the timelines themselves. So when I was fortunate enough to be, when I moved to Unilever, the position was for a project engineer. And at that time, I didn't know what a project engineer was. So initially in my career, like I kind of stumbled upon it. I didn't really search. Somebody sought me out. They said, "Hey, you were doing engineering for that company. You want to do engineering for us because we need somebody that with mechanical background to do some project engineering for us." The term project management was not familiar. It was more a thing, and then they partnered me up with a mentor who was previously a Unilever employee that retired at the age of 60, and I was with him for like 5 years, and he just walked me through. And there's no formal project management training. It's just him going through, oh, what you need to do next. Here's how we track projects, how we track costs, how we track schedule. And then I just learned on the fly and dealing, but I learned a lot of people management skills with him, right? So which is what project management is. More often than not, it's more people management than really tasks. But with and then that's kind of how I started with my project management career with Unilever.
Nice. So you started out as an engineer, is that correct? You were an engineer, then you became a project engineer.
Yeah.
Okay. What's a project engineer, and how does that differ from a project manager?
So project engineer is kind of like, so right now, essentially, when I was a project engineer, I still report to a project manager, right? So I'm like an assistant project manager, but the title is project engineer. So it's essentially you are given tasks that you perform. I'm maybe I'm managing costs, but the timelines does not sit with me. Project manager is involved with updating stakeholders and getting reports, doing your decks that you need to do, and then making sure that the timelines are done, dealing with no project engineers, contractors, and other stakeholders that we need input from, either from production, from QA, from R&D, from quality, right? So PM does all of that. Project engineer is more, I would say you would more likely you're getting quotes, you're getting the scope finalized, you're getting And then
I see.
you're presenting these quotes to the project manager so that they can make a decision on which to buy, which to
Gotcha.
procure, and then the timing of it. How long would it take? So project engineer's job is to develop that scope and to finalize it. So once it's
Mm,
finalized and it's approved, then you execute.
I see.
You
So you're
gotta
kind
have
of like
you only can that to the project manager.
right, and you're kind of like an SME on the
Right.
project. Okay.
Right. So essentially, in Unity, where you kind of brought in, like, if you have an expertise in mechanical engineering, so
Right.
you're brought in for any HVAC work or any piping work or any like equipment that we buy that has mechanical components, because you
Right.
have that expertise, so you can vet if somebody's like um, overcharging you, or the design that they provide is not good enough. Then you have input. It's not just you ask a question, they answer feedback. No, it's more like you're kind of challenging the approach that the contractors are giving you, given that you have background on those.
Yeah, makes sense. So I think I also had a similar trajectory as well, because I studied electrical engineering and computer science for about 2 years, and then I switched to petroleum engineering. So when I finished, I had this mix of petroleum engineering and computer science. So I was hired as a petroleum engineer in a software firm, and we're making software for petroleum engineers, right? So I had this engineering background, and then I was put on projects. So I ended up, because of my technical engineering background, I was put on these projects, and I ended up leading the
Nice.
project somehow, and then
Yeah,
that's how
I agree. I think it helps that to be technical at the beginning. I think so. Even
yeah,
for my, when I talk to my kids, you kind of have to have that technical piece for the first few years before you lead the project. It's so
right,
hard to listen to somebody that leads a project without any, or
yeah,
at least somewhat of a grasp of what you're trying to lead, right?
right,
So I think it really helps to have that initial technical background. But I think once you get a hang of project management, it's kind of is similar approach to most of the stuff that we need to do.
right. No, that makes complete sense. Yeah, I'm usually fascinated with how people get into project management, and I think like that story is quite common. All right, so Martin, let's get into the topic of the day. So there was one story that you shared with me before when we were chatting, whereby like you had delivered like about over 100 projects, and you thought that you did a good job, but then the person that you were reporting to thought differently. So can you share, maybe talk about that story, how you delivered the projects, but you ended up not really contributing to what was considered value in that company?
Yeah, actually, still with the same. I'm still with the same company. So it's previously called Northwest. So right now we're called Vital Infrastructure Properties. But at the time, so my role was I was brought in Northwest. I joined Northwest in 2022. I was brought in to build the PMO from scratch, because right before, initially we were doing projects through SharePoint and emails, and there's no prioritization. It kind of is ad hoc, right? Somebody sends a request, we do it, and then it's kind of first come first serve kind of thing. So we built a structure in, and we prioritize. We can do that intake. So as the years go, 2023, 2024, we said, oh, okay, we'll ask people up front, like Q4, what you guys are thinking for 2025, right? So we did that, and then when we, sorry, 2020, that's when 2020. So the year of 2024, we we got about 140 requests, 140 projects. So we have a team of about 10 people in IT, and for that year, I think we did 116 out of 135, something like that, 90 something plus percent. So we were doing a Q1. Typical for me, I would do a Q1 report and ask with the CEO, and I said, Martin, oh, that's great. You have 116, 119 projects. Then can you show me this? So I opened my dashboard, like beautiful dashboard, or the deck that I had, and he looked at the project names, and he said, Martin, and then he went back and said, this is between me, CEO, then it was Greg, and Tracy, or CEO. He said, out of this, a 9, it's not, right? So, okay, so that wasn't the, so obviously 116 is like the value of the other projects that we did.
Mm.
Then why are we there?
Right.
Kind of in my, I don't know if I should have asked why then, but at that time I said, okay, how can I fix? How can we fix it moving forward? So we turned it upside down. Before, instead of asking the people on the ground on what needs to be done, you we sit down, so we to talk to them, like what's important to you and what identify to vision, we cascade down. So we in for a year we in 80 something, which was almost half of the projects that we typically do. The project we did move the business forward. This, instead of getting project from their up and then determine the projects to help that vision. So in that sense that we with that mindset can perspective. Okay, we need to do value projects, not just projects for projects, right? To be messy for the sake of messy, not good, right? So kind of where it started, asking other questions like, what does this do? Why do we need to do this?
Right.
What's the improvement that you look at? And then we need to get business sign off before we kind of just did whatever the business asked of us, not really escalating. Did you know that this guy asked it's gonna cost us this much? There's like pre-interaction before. So now it's like more see when you request, we kind of have to have it signed off, kind of have to defend it, and then we do have a full accountability and making sure it's tied up with corporate strategy. So we know that we're working on the right thing.
Right. Is this a way to just describe? So before you sort of out to the rank and file and just like
Yeah, so essentially, yeah. We didn't just go. So essentially, what we did is say, hey, I sent an email to the leaders and I said, hey, Canada, hey, Europe, hey, ANZ, we're looking for a pipeline for projects next year. And they send that email to their ranks, and then their ranks submitted.
I see.
Right? They submit, hey, I need help with this, I need help with that. There's 50, there's 50 plus lists for Canada. There's a lot for corporate finance, and then there's Europe and ANZ here and there. Right? So, and then off the 100 plus list, we look at, okay, what must be done. Then we apply our prioritization lens.
Right.
But that way, it helps the specific individual or the specific group of but really move the rest of the business.
Right.
Instead of like a optimization of the AP process because we were fully manual, right? Or we had a ERP in place, but there's a lot of manual touch points that we have to do. We have to open the invoice, we have to send the invoice there, we have so on and so forth, right? So that work that was very important for. So there's a lot of delay in terms of payment because we couldn't get the invoice paid because that approvals were taking so long. And it gets stuck with they're sending to person A, person A has to send it to person B has to give it to person A. Then we get it, it's the same question. Did you approve It's a lot back and forth. So the project that we did last year, although like 3 projects, that duration was longer, but the business value now that it's automated. So
Mm.
business value across the organization, because now when there's in the portal and they can see activity that's happening, they can access in that portal and they see the approvers as they approve it and they know when they're going to instead of doing this back and forth. So those are the projects we're trying to do now. So that became like a strategy for corporate finance. Europe wanted another thing they wanted to do, let's say BAS, the automation systems in the cloud, so that they can do remote BAS stuff. So since that's the vision, then we determine the how do we get there, right? So
Right.
it's the other way. So instead of asking everyone, like what do the leaders need, determine the projects to support that, and then that's what we did. Obviously,
All
you're
right.
still gonna get the must do, like you know business as usual stuff where people need some filter for them to track their obviously their work and their tasks. But when we're presenting, we're really tracking any business projects, but coming from the top, not
Right.
from
Yeah. So now you're sort of starting from the company priorities, like what really the business, and then now just developing initiatives to support that. That is
right.
that.
So yeah, and even right, they're saying, let's say for this year, we want to get into say we just did the rebrand, right? So we are now called Vital Infrastructure. So what's next for that? Right? So from that, since that's the direction, so the key for us there was how do we make sure our apps are working after the rebranding? What are stuff that we need to do before day one? And then after day one onwards, what to do, right? So right now, our website updates with contracts, working with designer, the stuff, right? And then obviously there were events that were happening as we, announced it. So there's events in the so it might the PM, the portfolio can goes longer program, but there are multiple projects in the program, kind of thing.
Right. So is the PMO are they also involved in coming up with strategy, like
Yes.
so they also involved in coming up with strategy, and then now like how do you now execute involved from very early on.
I think that's the good part because I think what we had before we're going to execute. It comes as this has already been made.
Right.
Here's how you can help us. Right now, I think we're all on the table when we're thinking of the strategic projects, and they're from the start. So it's easy. It's we can address anything technology related early.
Right.
At the same time, we're on the table to provide strategy that what worked for projects, and we have the database. So it's just really applying the knowledge we learned. We go through these projects.
Yeah, that's really nice. This is something that a lot of PM organizations and functions struggle with. It's like because usually they find out after the fact, like they're brought in late and now they have to correct. So wait for you. How did you get the seat at from the very beginning?
Yeah. So before when I started, there was no formal intake, right? There was no we're seen as like one department. It's just IT. You need help with this, even if it's a project, it's an IT task. That's it. It's that as a project. When I came in, I wasn't used to that. So when in the program, I was in Canada, oh, she did the project as a project from start to end. Specific goal we need to achieve. Unique goal or service that start with and start and end, right? So the definition of a project. I track those all the time. So when I came in, there was no tracking. There's really a list of requests, and then it's one line of what the request was, who it was for, and then every week we'll put a note in one column. That's it. That's the project update. I'm like, why are we doing it this way? And which ones we're supposed to be working on? So we the whole thing. In order for this to work, we need to get buy-in. So my previous boss then came up with this week with the global steering committee. Because we're global company then. So we had the head of Canada, we have the head of Europe, we have the head of ANZ, and then the head of IT, HR, the C-suites, right? CEO, one CEO. And then we basically say we can approve about 70 to 80% of it. Most of them are IT related. We can take a call. Like the bigger stuff, like what needs investment, that needs significant effort. We need them to tell us which ones they want. So that's kind of how it started. But again, at the start, when we were asking, they kind of don't know offhand like what people on the side need until they ask. So what we did is initially I sent it over doing Q1, give us a list of projects, but they kind of farm that out to their managers and the directors, and then they went down, and then we get it from down going up. So what that gave us is a lot of small projects that brought small value. That even if a good size quantity, the value is not significant. So the challenge was change the mindset. What do you need? Let's say for Canada, what do you get 10% more rent here? Or for corporate finance, how do we get this report from a global report from 15 days to 5 days? How do we make sure that we pay vendors on time in full within the time allotted that we set? So those are give us your top 3 things that is important to you, and then we'll look at how we're going to projectize to get to what you need. And then what does that mean in terms of participation of the business together, like testing, to projectize it. Meant in terms of timing, okay, we need to get, and I need the commitment to, okay, we are ready to train, send your people to train, and then we'll validate training so that you can see an efficiency, and then the value is seen up front. And really, since they're vested in it, that's the part of their strategy that they're trying to achieve, they're going to have buy-in. So people under them would also commit.
Yeah.
So how we started as a global steering committee, and then when we shifted, what became like pillars. So global ops efficiency, with even corporate finance efficiency, and then AI enablement, and then really the IT side, the IT infrastructure side readiness is kind of like mandatory, needs to be done anyway. So that's kind of like tracked in a separate bucket. But from the business, is really right now that's it.
Yeah. No. So was the trust always there? Because like one common struggle is that yes, like these leaders, those key stakeholders, they have their top things that they need to achieve, but they don't always think of project manager, program management as a partner that would help them get there, right? So
I had to build trust. I had to build credibility that I was able to deliver, right? So I think prior to that interaction with the CEO, consistently we were delivering results, right? So it may not be the right value at the time, or at least the right projects that we were doing, but in terms of being, seeing a project from end to end, and also delivering projects that were being asked, and turning it over in time. And for me, it's also having visibility. So what I did is we have a quarterly meeting with the global steering committee, but we have a monthly meeting with stakeholders. So if you were the sponsor for a specific project, for let's say for the Canada region, I'll give a 1 monthly meeting for all Canada leaders or Canada sponsors, and we will talk about the projects there, what was, if we have hindrances. And obviously, I'm not going to wait for the updates. So sometimes I'm always the one removing blockers. So for my team, it's always, I can't do this because of that. So that becomes my role. And then I'll talk to the business. How can we get this out of the way so we can finish? So the constant exposure of making sure that things are moving forward is always great. And then whenever we close a project, I see it that we kind of close it in with, here's what we did, it took us this much. So it's really constantly exposing that you're delivering. So now as you get through that, you kind of get authority in that and trust, and build that trust. And then I think one of the things is, when 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 the VP of IT then was let go, me and a colleague of mine had to step up for a bit. And I think with that, I think there was a little bit of more trust given to us and ability to be in that room and really provide direction and strategy. So I think that's kind of where it
Yeah,
got
no,
in.
no, sorry. I was just gonna say that a couple of things that I like that you mentioned, because like trust is not just given, right? You have to sort of earn it. So you built it, you're delivering, and then you started to make a name for yourself. Um, yeah. So I really like that. The thing that I was gonna ask. So how do you determine value, right? Because sometimes like that can be nebulous. Like, okay, how do you determine whether a project is valuable?
So I think right now, so it's always going to be tied up to the goal of the business for this year. Let's say for this year, we're looking at um, efficiency, right? How do we make our business simple again? How do we make so it's all about automation. It's all about how can we make something that takes 15 minutes to 5 seconds, or something that takes about 2 weeks to does 2 days. So those are like the post challenges to us. So think about what process are you doing today? Can we simplify? Like things like approving an invoice. Why should we be approving an invoice for over 2 weeks when we can do 2 days? Something like that. So I think we always tie it to corporate strategy. So whatever the strategy is, we assume it's safe to assume and safe to acknowledge that that's what will bring the most value. So we make sure that any project request that I receive is tied up to one of the three or four goals for this year. Or is this a corporate efficiency? Is this a global ops efficiency project? How? Tell me why it's going to be more efficient for you, so that when I present it, it's easier to get a buy-in. Whether or not we ask them before they come to me, they've already vetted it from the head of, if it's Canada, if it's here, it's NC. They kind of have an understanding that it's something that they want to take. So that when we put it in our pipeline, it's easier to prioritize it rather than it's a fresh request. The leaders don't have any visibility. I kind of want them to have a buy-in from the leader before we take it into our pipeline.
Yeah.
So the value is set with the business, and just the goal for my end is to make sure that your whatever project you're raising is tied to that value. As long
Yeah.
as it's tied to that value, then we know if we finish this, it helps that goal, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, the top corporate goals, and then you make sure that, it's tied to that. Do you sometimes run into issues whereby like you have the goals, but it's not easy to actually break that down to
No,
the
100%.
project level?
Yeah,
How do you manage that?
I guess there's an art to that. But let's say let's say for global efficiency. Well, efficiency is easy. Doing something faster, more some faster or smarter, or with less errors. But
Right.
things like quality or
Mm,
sustainability, it's kind of hard to measure. It's just kind of
right.
like done or not done kind of thing, right?
Right.
So I think those are the ones that are kind of hard to not justify, but more get a higher priority from the list. But at
Mm,
the end of the day, I think it's really providing clarity on what the goal of the project is, and then really getting buy-in. So if there's a supporter for any project that's being raised and they think it's valuable, we're just looking at it from a point of view of, so right now, if you sort by value, what's the
mhm.
most valuable, we'll do those first. Or if it's a low-hanging fruit that takes me 4 days to get it, we'll do that. Right? But anything above 2 weeks, because we've transformed fully agile. So every 2 weeks we have a sprint, and we commit to delivering stories that geared towards that. If we can hit it in a sprint, we'll take it. But if it's gonna take me more than 2, 3 sprints, well, we might have to line up with other programs that are in line, so that we
Right.
know that we finish those ones first, because some of them are time sensitive, some
Yeah.
of them are critical for the next project. It's a prerequisite for the next project, so on and so forth.
Right. And Martin, how do you handle projects that are very important, behind the scenes kind of project, maybe like platform work, but they are never they're never the corporate. How do you handle those?
What you mean to say, well, that would fall under IT work. Anything
Okay.
that's, sometimes this was my struggle, our struggle early, is that we're considering IT projects as projects, but I think at the business level, those are things that we must do anyway, right? So there, like, let's say we have firewall, we need to update firewalls,
Right. Or
right?
you
So
need to do like a migration update. Like, so it's not really like
yeah, it's
revenue
right.
or anything like, yeah,
So
but it needs to
really
be
for
done.
that, so what I did, but I do have, uh, our delivery is reporting under IT. So what I did is I classified the program, or a way to separate out the standalone IT, which means there's no interaction with the business. It's really just myself, my team, and the sysadmin team just doing the work that's needed to keep the lights on, right? So it's updating firewalls, cybersecurity, all of these are projects, right? There's the website, like all of these are projects without having to necessarily have a touch point with the business. So we still keep it in the same platform. I just have an ability to filter them out. So when we're reporting, so the VP would need it, right? The CEO would need those this because we need to see that we're doing what we got necessary to protect our infrastructure, expand it, making sure that the business continuity is there. There's fail safes for any what do you call any attacks and so whatsoever. So it needs to be there. But I think from a business supporting perspective, I'm able to carve that piece out so that it doesn't mock up the rest of the business value, because those are the things that we need to do, right? But not necessarily like that. It's the boring stuff. It's not like the sexy stuff that, yeah, it's AI, it's this big project, or we're building a new facility. It's not like that, right? So, but these are the things that will support that. So right now, I'm able to tag it as a standalone IT. This is that's the thing that we did, and then I keep it in a separate. Oh, it's not. It's the same bucket but tagged as different. So when I need to filter, I just filter them out.
Yeah, no, 100%. I find that, when I was leading those kind of projects, because you're always competing with attention, resources, and all of that. So you always have to constantly be defending those projects, because, it's not like you mentioned, it's not the shiny, stuff. But if you don't do it, like, everybody will feel the pain, right? So you always have
100%.
to just be constantly, like, defending. So it's interesting
Yeah,
because
and I think if they say, "Oh, we don't have budget for that," and then it's just painting a picture of, okay, if it's a cost of compliance or cost of
right,
repair, right? So it's understanding that, or cost of brand hit. So it's really,
right,
but again, it has to go with planning, because you can't come to the business, hey, I need 150K for firewalls and firewall replacement for the next few years for 50 sites out of the blue. That has to be part of a budget building that you have to do, right? But if that's plan of the budget, they don't necessarily need to see that we're replacing 50 firewalls over 50 sites, in the report. That's not important for them, because for them, as long as we're protected, we're good. I don't need to know how, I don't even know when. As long as internet connection is safe, everything's secure, we're all good. So it's not necessarily sexy, or at least something to be hate with this. It's not something to be clapped on, but essentially, but something that we have to do anyway.
yeah. Right, amazing. If you can join this conversation so far, and you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. If you're watching this from Substack, just go ahead and subscribe. If you buy Apple or Spotify, go ahead and give us a follow, and leave us in. It's free to use, but it helps other people cover the show. All right. Okay. So now going back to the show, Martin. So I want to pivot a bit and talk about. There was a time that you were in the company, and there was a PMO that was there, but then it was pushed to the side. Could you talk to me through that story? Talk us through that story. Like, what happened? What happened when it was pushed to the side? If I'm using the right term, and then what happened afterwards? Like, how did things
Yeah, I
play out?
think before Unity before there was a how do you call it? Unilever engineering was a thing before, wherein we had a project director, I guess, PDM, project delivery manager, who's basically he has multiple project managers before, and they deploy them to different facilities. So I'm not really restricted to one site, right? So I could, if I'm done with one project, I could from food factory, I could go to personal care and to home care. Depends on my capacity, if I have capacity to do that. But at some point they said, okay, that's it's too centralized. We need, so they kind of put that away, and they kind of put every project manager into a site. So when we did that, what's good with the initial approach was there was standard execution on projects. Everyone is an MS project. Everyone is having the same one pager reports. Everyone has the same tracking tool, and everyone has access to see all of the stuff that everyone's working on.
Right.
But when it became to, I guess at some point it became complicated, because several factory managers in terms of leadership, in terms of the way. So there's a lot of patience needed forwarding perspective. So I think at some point they decided, oh, we'll just have the project managers dedicated to a site. So I was reassigned to home care. I think my colleagues went to personal care and foods and so on and so forth. So now we're like focused on just delivering for home care. So we kind of have a silo. So I would be delivering projects the way I felt that would need it, and obviously guided by the factory manager on what he needs to report on. And then it's not a problem, but it really, the contrast would be obviously the other factories would have a different approach in their delivering projects, but they're going to be compared with the same lens. So that's kind of where it becomes tricky. Oh, how come home care can finish on time? How come food can go under budget in here? So we kind of lost like the efficiency of that, having pushed that on the side. But we kind of get a bespoke approach in terms of reporting, applications, faster decisions being done, because we don't have to go through, because before PMO is, we're gonna have to get the approval from BDM, work with factory. Now we just go straight to factory and they say yes or no because it's their budget now. Right? Because BDM usually have their budget, and they kind of have our salaries were kind of like projectized, or cost, it's a cost center, so you kind of have to justify your cost that way as well. So it's kind of a lot of red tape to get through to get to a decision. But at the same time, like if I'm since I didn't need, since we don't have that kind of what do you call this? I can't see projects from the other side. I can't compare my cost to theirs. And it's a lot of work to get, hey, here's my cost for, let's say, piping work for this factory. Are you guys getting? I can't compare that anymore. It's kind of a lot of work. So now it's kind of sure. But in difference, you can have a bespoke approach rather than a standard approach. So it depends on where it brings more value for the business.
Right. So what was so you had a centralized PMO, and then you move from different PMs to various functions. What was the point there that caused that decision?
I think it's more geared towards preference of PMs, right? So there's like, okay, let's say I want Martin for a specific project, and I'm tied up for another, and they're waiting on somebody. So it's kind of like this kind of hard for in that sense. It's like if there's preference, it's not. So, but again, at the same time, because there's trust, right? So if I work for a project and this person like the work that I did, they're gonna want me for the next project. But obviously, in an approach where like that where it's centralized, you kind of deployed when when you're available next. Okay, more this next project is this, it's that, and then if you're not getting the same approach or you're not getting the same value, it's kind of hard out your stakeholders disappointed or wanting for more. Right. So at some point, if they keep on waiting, they say, "Oh, we're not being prioritized." So there's a lot of I think politics, but essentially, it's even there's a lot of managing stakeholders. So I think at that point they decided, okay, we need a dedicated one per site so that it's faster turn decisions. Now they also increased the SLAs for factory managers so they can approve more projects, without having to go through, I guess, leadership, right? So they have a budget in place for, let's say, they usually ask us for 8-quarter rolling of projects. Like, in the next 2 years, what are your projects that you can plan for? In my roles, I've been in that factory. I can give you, if you want efficiency, let's say automation here, repairs here, and so on and so forth. I can give a cost, and then we can budget that out, right? So that way it's faster for them. But again, it depends on. So eventually they brought it back for projects more than €1 million.
Okay.
Projects more than €1 million. Now we become dedicated to a project. Because before we were kind of doing projects from 50,000. In the Philippines, they were doing euro, so €50,000 over to 500,000. Anything more than $1 million kind of goes to Unilever Engineering, which I was part of eventually after. And then, yeah.
Right. So just going and see. So with the model where you have with a decentralized model, I think the advantage there is that PM has so they can just hit the ground running. There's already trust established. They're aware of the key stakeholders, so they can move faster in their own function, so to speak. Would you agree with that or no?
Agree, and that's just context. There's continuity, right? So I think once a project is turned over, I can turn it over to operations, and I'm able to train them, right? And I'm able to train them, and able to point them, and then I'm able to turn it over to the engineering team for maintenance, right? And so that even in Unilever, when I was doing it, even when we're doing factory acceptance tests, I would bring operators to Italy or to Spain and say, "Come with me. That's because you're the ones operating this machine. Tell me what's wrong with them." And it's fine because Filipinos are short. We're like 5'6" average height. And so one of the machines we bought in Italy, obviously in Italy, they're like 6 footers. So some stuff we can't reach, right? So just that additional context and having that additional relationship with the people there made it easier to get projects on the go right away, rather than introduction. Hi, I'm Martin. I'm your new project manager today. Then you have to rebuild that trust because it's a different set of people. I mean, the leaders knows you, but then the projects, the stakeholders that you have, the project team members that you have, are always new. If you're moving from one side to another, they don't know you. They challenge you every time. There's no buy-in because they're testing you all the time. But with the dedicated approach, now you work with these people every day. You have tasks for them, and you kind of see how you work, and they adjust to you. And once they adjust it, they know what to expect, and it's easier to buy in and to push back. At least we know how to handle them, right? So if I have a hard team member that I know is always late or always absent, I get to do a backup plan, or a mitigation plan for that. But if I'm in a new project, unlike with in the norming phase,
right. So this is continuity, trust, but what you are what you're losing is that standards, and that came with the centralized PMO, right? Like started with reporting.
I think that the real struggle would be for the leaders, right? So because essentially, if I'm somebody that is forget the company, you leave for others. Like if I'm a leader of a function, the reporting is going to be the same for everything. Like so, at some point, I have to get right reporting up to a point where it's right one, and the way to do that is through PMO, because the PMO would set that standard, and everyone would standard, and it all roll up to what that is. So without having a PMO or a centralized one, there's a lot of transformations happening. There's meetings for a meeting. Like
Mm.
we're gonna go for a meeting to prepare for a meeting to prepare for another meeting. It's like 2 meetings to prepare for a third meeting, which is the third meeting is the most important one. So we'll have a pre-meeting to develop the deck. The deck will be with a meeting with the make sure the deck is up to speed, and then that deck is for the head of the factory. And the head of the factory will bring that deck to the leadership of the other factories before they present like a bigger thing. So a lot of that can be avoided by having a roll up function, which is typically a PMO, I would say, in terms of projects. Obviously, for operators, they would have the separate thing. But for projects, I find that having a PMO, even if it's not PMO, a PMO person that would be just job is to make sure everything's aligned so that it rolls up, and then you kind of have provide clarity to business leaders to make faster decisions. I think that's kind of decentralized. So it's not.
Right.
So I was talking about this in the earlier post today. I had the week that if your function is to track tasks, your expensive overhead, you're not supposed to be tracking that task. Although part of the job is really protecting the value that you said you're gonna deliver. Right.
Mm.
So how am I doing that? If you're not seeing the full picture, if you're not don't have a how do you know you're delivering the right value? So that's kind of the thing that you're kind of losing with the decentralized system.
Right. So when the PMO was decentralized, the PMO sort of lost, for lack of a better word, they lost control over the PMs and went to the different sites. Is that
Correct.
accurate? Okay.
Correct. But also, yeah. Also, they don't get to choose. They don't get to see the prioritization. The factory would do what they think would be best.
Right.
Like, and then they would make the decisions for themselves, and it would deviate from a decision from another factory because the leader there would be, oh, that's not important for us. It's just more important, right? So,
Yeah.
if the PMO sets the standard that say, hey, let's say for any food contact, it should be 316L, the material. But so 316L material is like 20% more expensive than 316, which is also stainless steel. But if they don't have the PMO to set the standard, you kind of goes away, right? So they kind of make their own decisions, and at some point, they'll buy us back 2 or 3 years down the line with when that other material starts to rust and all that.
Yeah.
So the standard is good because especially for big organizations, I think it's still good to have it because setting a standard is always good. So that source of truth will always be there, and you're kind of geared to you have the same compass orientation to where you want to go in terms of project management.
Right. So was that impact felt at the leadership level of not having a centralized PMO?
I think so. Because I think there's different results. I think it now becomes the risk is going down to which PM you get, right? And then also without a PMO, if a project manager leaves, there's somebody to support. Because before with a PMO, if I leave tomorrow, another project manager will be slotted in my place. So now without that department, if a project manager leaves a factory or a business unit, that slot is open, project stops.
Right.
Or somebody like an engineering manager, production supervisor would take on a project on top of their current role. So now they're spread thin. So you would have slippage, you would have errors, you would have rework, which costs more money. Right. So yeah.
The reason I'm asking that is because like the PMO was sort of pushed to the side, and then it was reinstated. Like the centralized PMO was reinstated. I guess I'm trying to figure out like what was the pain that was really felt that made them go from okay, let's bring back the centralized model. Like
I think the centralized model came when they wanted bigger investments. I think it became harder.
I see.
Because I think with smaller investment like 50,000, 10,000, 50,000 USD, or just for context, it's easy to approve on a local level. Once you start building a factory, once you start building an extra line, and you're talking about like the biggest factory that I built was I think 27 million euros over 2 years. Right? So a project that big that has to go built a business case. That's a full-time job on its own.
Right.
So without, if I'm to do a factory plus that, I'm gonna left, the small projects will not have capacity. I will not have capacity to do them.
Right.
So what they did is when they sought out building factories, when they secured volume to expand in the Philippines, then and built 2 factories, 3 factories, 4 factories. They built it back up. They supported now. They got the top project managers there to be part of that team, and then really focus on projects €1 million and up. So for over, I said 5 years, we were constantly building. We built a factory for foods. We built an extra line for home care. We built multiple lines for additional capacities for stuff. So anything more than €1 million first, and then after
Right.
that, things die down a bit. Anything more than €500,000 and up would be with us, and it's easy to get there because equipment, manufacturing equipment is super expensive.
Yeah.
So like a manufacturing line can easily be like a €2.3 million expense, just equipment alone, right? So, so it's that's kind of the value of having a PMO, because now you have more eyes in it. There's more control, and then you're driving quality, you're driving R&D, you're driving production. You're having all these people in the same room without having to deal with the daily, day-to-day PM work on site.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, because the investment is larger, so you now need that rigor because the stakes are higher. So you need to make sure that you have that centralized PMO. So that makes complete sense. I know there's some questions that are coming in. We're going to get to the questions later on. By the way, if you have questions, just please put them in the chat. I want to pivot a bit now to AI. I know that you I know that you use AI, and I'm always curious to know how people are using AI, how PMs are using AI, maybe differently or in interesting ways. So, do you have any that you've come across, or are you using AI in maybe new ways that many PMs might not know?
For me, I like I initially started using AI like everybody is, like ask and then receive, right? How do I do this? Receive. How do I do this? Receive. So I stopped doing that and start thinking systems. So really, I've started going at it from an agentic perspective. So I have an agent that does my minutes for me, because I think more PMs that are listening would have the same struggles. You would go into a 2 hour meeting of a kickoff, and you're scrambling on your notes all the time, like trying to get everything that you can, but you're half listening, half writing your notes. And if you miss something, you ask again. So what's great with AI and with the technology today, I think your standard subscription for Zoom or the Teams would give you transcripts, would give you AI summary, but a step further, right? Because the summary can get it wrong. Their names are like, I would still take down notes, but more important stuff. But also, I would drop that transcript. I would drop that my notes into one agent that I built, and it would give me, not just give me the minutes right away. It would ask me questions, like clarify stuff, like who's gonna own this. If it's not clear, it's gonna ask me that. Who's gonna own this task? Because somebody mentioned that they need to submit blah 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 by end of the day, but there was no name. And I'm able to provide context. So once I provide context, my minutes can be sent literally 10 minutes after the meeting with full actionable items that are key for the next meeting. And then I use that same chat for the whole project, right?
Mhm.
Meaning that one line, that because in ChatGPT you have one chat, one subject. So the initial chat would be a of meeting, and then that is already trained on that. And then whatever updates that I have while we're doing have a platform for project, I can provide a snapshot of, okay, here's the task was finished, provide it in there, give me the, let's say, an agenda for the next meeting based on my snapshot from the project platform and the notes from last time. It's going to give me context on what we should be talking about the next meeting, and then it's the same chat until the project ends. And so that's kind of how I use it. And then obviously there's a lot more than that. Like Right now we built something where, so since I'm managing, my team is not just delivering projects, they're also doing operational tickets.
Okay.
So now we built something wherein I can ask our help desk agent, say, how many tickets does Jason have? And based on that, which one needs to be done first. Because sometimes when you're too close into ticketing, you don't notice a ticket that comes in. So I'm able to highlight that and give it to them. Hey, I think this one is priority because it's blocking a payment. They can't access for the last 2 days. So those are the things so I'm always thinking about it in systems now rather than just ask and receive.
Yeah. So the second case, this agent, it has like it's plugged into your ticketing system, and yeah,
It's pointed to our database of
okay.
open tickets, and essentially I can ask insight. So my initial goal for building that with the team was why are we getting tickets? What are the common themes? So I didn't need like specifics, right? So let's say, oh, we get 50 requests every month for password reset for some reason, right? So do we either redo a training? Then I can ask if the same agent would build me a training material, like, or an SOP. The same agent would build me an SOP, and we can put that in a knowledge base. And or eventually, the goal is to have a chatbot within our intranet and say, "Here's a problem that I have." Then how in other sites you could do a self help to reset
Right.
your password. Step one is this. Step two is this. So they can self help.
Okay.
At the very least, eventually, is I'm able to, like, if we're building a knowledge base, give me that, let's say, the top 10 tickets that we receive in terms of themes, like are we getting errors in something. It
Right.
would give me a sense of what we need to focus first in terms of root cause analysis. It would give me an ability to, okay, if we're getting this much errors because of manual, how do we automate that? So we can do root cause analysis and apply projects, but we remove that problem for everyone.
I
Right? So
see.
it's not just tickets, fine, tickets are part of the day, and you get
Right.
like 50 tickets a day. But I want to go past tickets and see why are we getting them and see the root cause and apply projects that way.
Okay. And if I'm understanding correctly, so right now, the stage that the agent is at is analyzing like the ticket that you're getting to understand problem themes so that you can.
Yeah, so what's good with it is it's a tool for everyone. It's for me. My use case would be I need to see what the team is working on and making sure that they're working on the right thing. So in the morning I would say, what is Jason working on today? What is PT working on today? And it would give me, oh, Jason has 50 tickets here. It's like the stuff that he has. And then I'm always looking for what's urgent. Like somebody's in the business that's not able to work like really stop. Some of them are low, they're tickets, but they don't have to be resolved within the next few hours. But right now, when we're doing tickets, everyone has the ability to say it's urgent, it's not urgent, it's medium, it's local. But every request, if you give that to them, if you give that ability to the end user to say that this is urgent, everything will be urgent.
Right.
So it's hard for my agents to have an ability to decipher which one is really urgent based on that field. So
Right.
what the bot does is to go through the subject and the body and give context and then prioritize it for me that way.
I see.
Like this
So
person is getting some invoice block because
right.
there's no workflow attached to that invoice. So that's a lot. And that's a 5-minute thing. So I will highlight those at the beginning of the day to make sure that they resolve it. So that's supported. And I'm looking out also for tickets that are masking us tickets. So there are, given that we have a big pipeline, some people would have to wait for projects to be done. So that they're trying, not that they're trying deliberately, but they're asking piecemeal on stuff that they want to be done. But when you look at it, it's really a project. So it kind of filter that to the team and said, okay, we'll do a project intake, add it to the pipeline because this one's going to take us more than a week to finish. A custom report that you want done is going to take us a week to finish. So we have to ask what you need, what transformations you need, what format you need it in, so on and so forth. Then we have to build it. We have to test it. Right. So that whole thing is a project in itself. So that's not a ticket. So that's kind of, so by having that as agent, we're able to, at least for my use case, to analyze that. But for if you're an agent, it can help you with, okay, give me minutes a day. If it's live now, it can help me with prioritization as well. So I don't have to guess which one we're talking about. And also, it gives me a list to say who requested the most tickets for the month.
Mhm.
And then I could touch base with that user and say maybe there's a training requirement, maybe there's a tool that they need so that they don't have to keep raising tickets. So we're able to adjust analysis that way better rather than just hitting a ticket, closing it down, and then hitting it again, closing it down.
Right.
So I want them to have further analysis on just not just closing tickets.
Right. So what I'm hearing, thanks for sharing that. So I'm hearing several use cases. So at first, it's root cause analysis for recurring problems and things that you can, I guess, more strategically some of the recurring problems and things like, okay, maybe we need training in this area, or maybe we need to implement some sort of solution so that we don't get this request every time, automation so that we don't get this request every time. So that was one. The other one is prioritization, because you can't rely on users to put the priorities, otherwise everything will be urgent, right? So
Yeah,
and then right?
yeah, and maybe the other use case that I want the team to build is just one more. So if you're raising a ticket, more often than not, the first 3 hours is us asking you what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because you tell me you said raise a ticket, hey, this is not working, period. That's it.
Right.
Like, and then I'm gonna book a meeting, oh, you're on leave today, so it leaves open. And then I'm on leave tomorrow, I'm sick tomorrow. And then it's been 6 days and we haven't heard on what's the problem. So one good use case for this would be, hey, I have a problem. We'll give access eventually, but we'll give it access to everyone, but essentially have a problem. And then you would interact with then chat, but like give me snapshots. And once it's done, it has all the information so that when it reaches our desk, we can execute. We don't have to ask you questions about it because it's incomplete. So the goal is be able to triage it for us and then put the right category on it without having to second guess if it's really urgent or not. So eventually, my vision would have to be, if it's when you receive the ticket and it says urgent, it's actually urgent based on the way we categorize urgent. If it's medium, it's medium. If it's low, it's low. Right. So we have set the standard on what's urgent, what's low, what's medium. So we're just gonna train it on that so that it helps us with that. If you see urgent, you open it. It's not urgent, you can manually set it to medium if you want to do that. At least the triaging is not based on context of people receiving it. Right now we have a help desk person. Right now he's looking at application and just basically triaging it to the right person. But what we could have for the person that receives it, how do I manage 50 tickets? Which ones are urgent, which are not? So right now everything is mostly urgent, kind of hard to get through. So that's why we have to build that system in so that we can avoid it. And then obviously the training would have to be redone for the business eventually. Right now there's a lot of things happening. I've told you this morning, but I think eventually half of the year we're gonna have to reintroduce how to raise a ticket. How to raise a proper ticket, not just it's not working, period. It's more what's wrong, what platform, what did you do, how do we replicate this error, what's the error message, like all of these things. So that's for an AI approach for ticketing, but I have the same for project intakes. Right, so for project intakes, it's gonna I need a project. Okay, why do you need it? What's wrong with what's the current process? What's wrong with it? What's the pain point? If you get this, what's the benefit? How is it tied to corporate strategies? So it's asking all these questions already, and to us it has everything it needs. Then it goes to my plate, and then I'll call you for missing stuff. So that now the meeting that we have, and I don't become the bottleneck, of these projects, because now my meeting with you already have full context. I just have a few more follow-up questions that you didn't provide. I need clarification on, and it's easier to get that list in front of people that approve it. Right? Without me being, I think my struggle in the early years here in Northwest, I would do 7 calls over December, January. 70 calls with the business, just taking intakes. Not even priority, just taking intakes of what it is,
Trying to get the context. Yeah.
get context. And then the scheduling issues become, an issue because now there's projects that has to go, and there's a lot of stuff. So I become the bottleneck. So to debottleneck that, or I'm currently looking in how do I make it so when it appears in my desk or on my queue, already have the information I need, and it's just really now resourcing it with the team and then prioritization with leadership.
No, I mean, amazing. I like that. So root cause analysis, prioritization. I also like the one that you mentioned, where it's like these projects that are masked as tickets, right? So being able to just decipher that and say, okay, it seems like this is a project. Maybe let's put this in the project lane and let's get more context there. And then the other thing that you mentioned was reporting. So I guess after the fact, you see, you can do analysis, reporting. Who's raising the most tickets? Is there a reason? And then the fifth that you mentioned was getting the right context, right? So if a ticket is raised and you don't have complete information, the AI can sort of nudge the user to give the right information so that the human has the complete picture and they can go ahead and resolve the problem, right? So amazing. Thanks for sharing all of these. I think we are at the time now where we can go to questions. I'm just gonna go to the chat.
I've got 10 minutes.
That's fine. Yeah, 10 minutes is more than enough. We'll just pick some questions. First of all, what problem do you want to solve? All right. Hi. Some LinkedIn user said, "Hi, I'm really enjoying this session." All right. So unfortunately, I can't see your name for some reason. It says LinkedIn user, but yeah, I would take a look at my LinkedIn connection request. I get a lot, so I'll take a look and hopefully I can respond to your DM. All right. I think communicating with stakeholders is key. All right. That's it. Person just making a comment. Sheldon says regular maintenance IT work is not really a project in my opinion. Yes, I think business as usual work, like KTLO, keeping the lights on work, it might not necessarily be a project, but I think what I was referring to are these IT are necessary, but they're not repeated. Like, you want to migrate from one platform to the other, or you need to you need to move from one database to the other. Like these are not things that you do regularly, but they're projects, but they're not necessarily business projects. So I think that's what we meant. Not like, okay, you're just in regular maintenance at the end of the week. I hope that makes sense. All right. I think it's more comments that I'm seeing. I'm not really seeing. All right. So there's this question from Harold. Why does the PMR set the standard for steel?
Yeah. That was an example, Harold. To be honest, it was more this list basically the material is set by R&D, but obviously R&D and quality, and for food that makes sense, but for, let's say, for others, so that's a bad example. Maybe if the PMO would set like the way we're tracking, let's say our Gantt charts have to be an MS project. So if somebody does not know how to do MS project, they would do it in Excel. Now it's hard for the project delivery manager to transform that. But imagine a project, you get that format. I have to figure out where. So the standard more making the methodology that you whether big on the steel was under.
For sure, Harold. Thanks, Harold. So question from Daphne. I often see delivery less servant leadership. In your experience, what separates project managers who create lasting value through servant leadership from those focused mainly on execution? Why hasn't strategic project manager become the norm yet? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's more geared towards not I you'd find that mature or just have strong project management skills, and they value project managers in a way that they bring them to the table early. So sometimes it's a line wherein how mature are the leaders in terms of project management, because sometimes they were kind of more leaders kind of did it themselves, so now they were struggling to bring somebody in to get that in. So the way I did that is to show that I can consistently deliver. So you might have to start with good execution first, because once you've provided that they can let go, that they can actually let that go and just wait for results, then that's where you become part of the table and do strategic leadership.
Hmm. So if I'm hearing you correctly, at whatever level that you're at right now, just make sure that you deliver there, and then, you would earn trust, and then you would now be invited to rooms
Yeah,
that you're necessarily part of. Okay.
correct. As you deliver, as you provide results, as you become more visible, the next project will be assigned to you, and as you consistently deliver, you become authority on that, and at some point you'll realize, oh, I'm always on these tables, because they kind of like the way you deliver and the way you manage projects, and you'll be on the table sooner than later.
Okay. And I think one question that you're saying is, why hasn't strategic project management become the norm yet?
Again, I think it comes with being maturity. I think it's really coming to a point wherein how mature is the how are you guys tracking your project, how are you reporting your projects. If it's just you saying done and done, that's not really, it's you task reporting, that's not project management. So I think you kind of have to drive the platform to a point wherein you're driving results rather than task closure.
Yeah. All right. I know we have a few more minutes left. There's still some questions, but maybe we can tackle those offline. But I do want to get recommendations from you, Martin. What's one book you recommend or love?
Oh, I like the Art of War.
Okay.
That you can gain insights in that one. But I do read a lot of I guess fiction. So like the Harry Potter series. I'm like a big Potterhead. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Not a lot. There's not a lot of time to read books. Not these days. I told you I have 2 year old. I
Right.
have 2 dogs. I have full time work. I don't know how to squeeze in the next book in there.
Yeah.
Other than the Bible, but
Yeah.
maybe
All good. You're a busy guy. What's one app you love or recommend?
it's funny, guys. I use TikTok a lot, but I use TikTok in a way I train it to have algorithm on AI. So all my algorithm in TikTok is AI.
All
So
right.
that I know I keep up with it, and I make sure that I use the recommendations that they have. I try the prompts that they have. I try the systems that they use, and I see how I can apply that work. So I use it TikTok that way, not just to just doom scroll. So I make sure I switch AI, and then I like the stuff that I want to see, and then make sure that my algorithm is kind of like more AI.
Makes sense. Podcast. One podcast you love or recommend?
Podcast. I'm a big basketball nerd, so when I walk the dogs, I'm all but it's nerdy basketball stuff. So not really a lot. Maybe some of the Tim Keller podcasts more for faith, but other than that,
Yeah.
so basketball and faith.
Basketball. Any particular ones come to mind that you want to that you
Basketball,
love?
I like the Mismatch podcast. It's
Mismatch? Okay.
yeah, Mismatch, and also like Bill Simmons.
Okay.
The big Lakers fan, so Lakers Nation podcast. So I juggle between three because I think they
Yeah.
kind of come up with whenever I'm walking the dogs twice a day for 40 minutes each. It's about like 1.5 times speed so I can get
Yeah.
from
Listen fast.
oh,
What's one productivity hack that actually works for you?
I I connect my so I use Copilot to go through my days. Like give me what's up for the day.
Hmm.
Just give me emails and minutes that are directed to me and what's in my calendar. Just help me prepare the- I have one project. So I know that here's the chat. Where were we? So
Right.
that's kind of how I kind of organize. So I don't have to keep separate notebooks. It's all in that same chat. So yeah, that's what I do.
Nice. When you're stressed or overwhelmed, what helps you?
A good walk.
Okay.
Or PlayStation 5. I still like playing games. I want like 30 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour to just go through my backlog of games. There's too much games, too little time. But yeah, walking or playing games.
Yeah, that's nice. So thank you so much for making the time. For people that want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
I'm in LinkedIn. I think it's just a search my name, Martin Newman. It's really that's kind of where most of my stuff are.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin. Really had a good time with you. All right, take care.
If you have any questions for the people in the chat, just hit me up in LinkedIn. I'm not as big as Mokhtar, but looking forward to connect.
Thank you so much for coming, Martin. Yeah, take care now. Bye.